Alright, so we're up to scenario number 5. You have a tech package. It's going to have 8 speakers or 10 speakers depending how you describe it. You need to decide which speakers you're going to amplify and which you're going to leave on the factory power. In this case, we have to leave the factory amplifier connected so we can manipulate the volume with the factory radio. If you bypass the factory amplifier, there is no communication between the amplifier and the radio. You will not be able to adjust the volume from the radio. When you turn the knob, it will not do anything. When you turn the knob on the factory system, it sends commands from the factory radio to the factory amplifier via CAN bus to turn up the volume at the amplifier. So that's why you lose volume control. So you're going to want to leave the factory amplifier in place. So we're going to leave it connected. We're going to integrate into it. Here's what the factory amplifier will look like. This is from an MDX, but it's going to be the same. It's just going to be mounted here on your TSX with a bracket, but the connections are the same. You have a 28 pin and 18 pin. So the way you integrate into the amplifier is you capture the output. So this is the input, this is the output, this will plug into here, and now this plugs into your factory connection. Then these wires are all labeled for you to decide which speakers you want to amplify. So most of the time I tell people to leave their center speaker not amplified and their rear door speakers not amplified, to amplify the rear deck and the front doors. So that's what we're going to do since we only have a 4-channel amplifier. We're also going to grab our subwoofer signal, but we're not going to feed the factory subwoofer back any audio. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut these wires and we're going to connect them to our line out converter. If you want to amplify every single channel, you need a Link 8 or an LC8i from Audio Control. I like the WaveTech pieces more, but it's up to you what you want to use. If you want to go super advanced, then you want a DSP. The bit node from Audison is a good choice. Audio Control has good choices. There are a ton of DSPs. You want it to have high level inputs. You want it to have at least 6, if not 8 inputs. So if you're confused about what to get, check out the buying guide. But in our case, I'm going to show you with the Link 6. I am going to leave the rear doors, my center, on the factory amplifier. So they're still going to have audio from the factory. I'm going to amplify my front doors, including my tweeters, my subwoofer, and my rear deck speakers so you can hear it. You're going to want speed wire or multi-conductor wire. This just has multiple conductors. I mean, there's a bunch of little wires in there. So this has 9 wires already in it, and you can use this to run signal from the amp bypass to the amp. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's just bridging the gap because these wires aren't long enough right here. So on the plug, that's the male. This is going to plug into the amp. This is the output from the amp. You're going to cut the wires that say FR plus sign, RL plus sign, sub negative, sub positive, which is over here, front right positive, front left negative, rear left negative, front right positive, rear front right negative. Those are all your door speakers. So front door speakers, rear door speakers, sub. On this side, the wires that you cut go like this. So you have black and yellow. You're going to need to tap. These wires don't come with this. You're going to need to find extra 2 wires. You can use more remote wire, but ground to ground, which is that first pin, and then constant power, you can grab them right out of here on this same harness. Then your remote in that we ran earlier from fuse 18. Then this is your remote out that's going to go to your amps. Then it goes white, white, black, gray, gray, black, green, green, black, purple, purple, black, brown, brown, black. And that's your output from your amplifier. And now you have RCAs to use and you have a remote. This is the biggest difference in your tech package, is that you have to use the line out converter and you have to grab this harness instead of the amp bypass. Then from your speed wire, so from here, it's going to be my speed wire. I'm going to color match to this side, and that's how I'll get sound back into the car. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hook up my RCAs and I'll show it to you when it's done. I hooked all these up. So AL is whites, AR is gray, BL is green, BR is purple, positives on the top, negatives on the bottom. I did not hook any of this up yet. I told you where I got my remote from. Unlike your bass, your tweeters here are protected. They have a bass blocking capacitor on them, so you're not going to have extra whites or extra grays. Everything's just going to match 1-to-1, and all your colors are just going to match. I'm just going to put caps on these, and then all of our wiring will be done. Right, so all my wiring is done, and before I plug anything in, I just want to showcase it to you one more time. So on this side of the connector, your brown wire is not going to get hooked up unless you're going to keep the factory sub, or not in our scenario. Then you needed to wire tap yellow and black. Then your remote comes out of here from your blue from this last terminal right there over to your speed wire so I can run to your amps. So it goes ultimately to the remote of your amps. Then we have our speaker outputs are going to our LC, to our Link 6. I showed you where they all go. And then here you're just color matching to the speed wire, and this is coming out of your amp down around this wire back to the factory connector. Here's the final product. I know it looks crazy, but for your demonstration, this is as good as it's gonna get. So the connector that used to plug into the amp goes into our T harness, and then the other side of our T harness goes back into the amp. The wires that we strip cut are then going to our WaveTech piece. Our WaveTech piece, you want to set your gains. You're going to watch for these clip lights. You're going to set these in the middle though, so that the inputs are coming from their directive inputs. And then here we go. We have our fronts, our rears, and our sub going to our amps. That's the biggest difference in the tech package, is that you have to do that or something similar with a DSP. You just don't get harnesses to connect. You have to add that extra step. If you're wondering what to get, look at the buying guide, because it's going to show you which amps or which DSPs to consider. This is on too. You can see the little power light. So everything's working the way it's supposed to. You just want to clean up your wiring so it's not as messy as that. But that's going to cover all the scenarios. I think this is going to cover everyone, because it's going to show you how to do subs, how to do 2 amps, 3 amps, etc. You're just going to need a bigger piece. So Link 8 instead of that, a bigger amp, a 6-channel or 2 4-channels, a bigger subwoofer amp. It's just going to matter to how loud you're trying to get. I think this car has a great platform to get really loud because of all your factory speaker locations. You have plenty of speakers. So we're going to install our fuse tap on fuse 18. And since we took this panel off, this is where the diagram is. Fuse 18 is on my bottom row. Oh no, fuse 18 is my top fuse, 7.5. It says accessory. Of single fuses, 18 is right up here. I'm gonna pull the fuse. Oh, so this isn't the right fuse tap per se, but you can make it work because it uses the same teeth. But this fuse won't fit into the fuse tap, so we're just gonna grab a different fuse tap. This is a mini fuse, I think, and then this is a micro fuse if I remember correct. So now we got our right fuse tap. This is the wrong fuse though. It has a 10 amp fuse. You want to use like a 3 amp or a 2 amp fuse, but for demonstration purposes this will work. So we're gonna slide the fuse that we took out back into the first slot, not the slot that has the wire coming out. So the second slot has the wire coming out. First slot is going to look like that, and then we're going to put it back into number 18. I have power coming from the battery. Ignore these. I have 4 gauge. This only calls for 8 gauge, so I'm using those as converters, but I'm also going to be using those for when we do our 2-channel amplifier setup, so we're leaving them in place. But just imagine that this wire runs all the way to here, that wire runs all the way to there. So we have ground, power. We ended up grounding right here. This is for illustrative purposes, so I could show you need to remove the paint. You could choose that ground as well, or this ground is up to you. If you use this ground, you will lose this right here. So I drilled my hole with an impact and a step bit. This is called a step bit. This is what you want to use. Make drilling the hole real easy. And I'll show you on this side and the other side. So here, you can see that nice hole into the body. And that's what I was talking about, that this flap, you can tuck it up and above this, and then you can drill your hole as big as you need it to. Then we're gonna run our wire from here down this way, all the way this way, and then to the trunk.